Hey Baylor fans, this is your call to gear up with Harley-Davidson of Waco. Whether you're hitting the open road or tailgating at McLean Stadium, we've got the ride to match your Bear pride. Check out our wide selection of new and pre-owned motorcycles, visit our service department, or shop all the latest gear and accessories to show off your Baylor spirit and Harley pride. Visit us today and find your freedom on two wheels. Harley-Davidson of Waco, where Baylor fans never ride alone. Visit in-store or at hdwaco.com. Sic Em Bears.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Sic Em Podcast, presented by Harley-Davidson of Waco. We love Harley-Davidson, riding into the new year with Harley, and look who we have in the new year, Baylor's new Vice President and Director of Athletics. Our good friend is back home, Doug McNamee. Welcome to you.
It's good to be sitting with you, Jay. Thank you.
This is fun.
This is fun.
This is fun. We got a lot of ground to cover today, and you're drinking through a fire hose right now, but thanks for your time. Okay. We appreciate that. I said that term to James Nagy last week, and he had kind of a blank stare. I'm not sure he knew what I was referring to.
He'll find out.
Right?
He'll figure it out pretty soon.
Oh, yeah. So welcome to you. Glad you're here. You've been at Baylor before, a number of different roles. I mean, you're Baylor through and through. What makes this the right time to come back home for this position?
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole journey has just been, orchestrated certainly by a higher power to provide me the knowledge and the experience to hopefully not just get this opportunity, but to do it well. And for me, I've said it's a one-of-one job opportunity. College athletics is always been a draw, but specifically Baylor in college athletics in this moment is what's most appealing for me right now. And I think that the last 7 years of working outside of college athletics, I tell folks, there was definitely a thought when you left 7 years ago, was this potentially you're leaving this path and you'll not return. And I think there was part of me that was understood that that might be the path, and that might close that door in perpetuity. And in hindsight, what I realized is that it was the only way that this moment would ever come about, because the last 7 years, had I stayed here, whether I had been a candidate or even been in the mix for the conversation, what I can tell you is I would not have been ready to do the job. And it's a challenging job as it is, and it's going to take every ounce of energy. But the last 7 years gave me the experiences and the skill set to where I could say I'm ready for the moment.
Good. We loaned you to Chip and Joe for a few years, and then Field and Stream, and then the time is right to come back home. Absolutely. You mentioned one-on-one, one of one for Baylor. Sorry, one-on-one is basketball, but Baylor really occupies a unique space there. Christian mission, Power Four conference, R1 institution, really tight-knit Central Texas community. Explain what you mean and how beneficial that is to Baylor to be a one-of-one.
Yeah, I think especially in this moment of disruption for college athletics, everybody's looking for their edge. Like, where can they find the competitive advantage to be successful? And as you take an assessment of what we have in our favor, I think that's a huge gift that we talk about with that one-of-one status. And I spoke about that. And you work down the stats of the schools that are Power Four, so they're competing at the highest level. The schools that are one, research institutions competing at the highest academic level. And in our case, a church-affiliated, unapologetic platform is unique. It's one of one in the specific category that we play in. And so I think as an athletic department, to have that and to really lean into it and understand what makes us unique, and then go use that in our favor. And I don't mean to say that in a disingenuous transactional way, but truly to understand who fits this place, and that if you go and pursue those individuals, you're drawn here. You feel like there's a higher calling and there's a higher purpose. And I can certainly speak to that from a firsthand experience, is that this is the job in college athletics that's of interest to me. And I mean that respectfully for all the other athletic directors and institutions that are out there. But I only want to do this at a school like Baylor. And so I think when you're in that seat, our coaches have that same mindset, then attracting our student athletes just becomes a natural step.
Good. Why is it that you believe we can attract student athletes, and it is still student athletes, to Baylor who want to compete at the highest level, who want to win, but also believe in and contribute and embrace our Christian mission?
Yeah, I think those two aren't competing. They're not competing forces. I think that, our Christian mission asks us to participate, but to do so with the intent of excellence. And so I don't think that those are against each other. I think they actually have a synergetic approach. And while there may be a smaller subsect of individuals or student athletes or coaches or even administrators that are interested in being a part of that, the ones that do fit that believe in the mission, I think we have such an advantage to connect with them and to allow those to be integrated on a day-to-day basis. People talk about, hey, you have to just experience it to understand it. And I think when coaches get that opportunity to come here, when student athletes, I've already seen it in my time, they get to come here, they visit, and they get a little taste of it. It's addictive. And there's a higher calling of, hey, I want to do my life there. I want to be in this formative stage of my life where I can do it in a way where it goes hand in hand with competing at the highest level, striving for excellence, which is success and winning, and also doing so while strengthening, most important part of our lives, which is that spiritual journey.
Good. I mentioned James Najee. We had him on the podcast just last week. A lot of national conversation about, I don't think so much him as the situation that he finds himself in. And our coaches have been, they did everything by the books. I know you're very supportive of everything that transpired there to get him in a Baylor basketball uniform.
Yeah, I think there has been a healthy amount of misdirected, anger towards him as a student athlete and towards our coaches. And I recognize that there's a lot of changes within college athletics, and, people are blown away with how much college athletics has changed over the last few years. And the idea of someone, everybody looks at the image of him in a summer league game wearing a NBA jersey, and they just can't fathom that this is a possibility. It certainly has been a circumstance in other sports where players have been drafted in the professional leagues and have ultimately still played in a college capacity. This rule is not a new rule. It's not a loophole. It's not a circumvention of the policies. It's been in place for a long period of time. And it's one of the circumstances because of all the changes within college athletics. The situation to merit a player wanting to do this really hasn't made sense. And as revenue share and NIL has become relevant, so has this become an opportunity. And so, the student athlete, and you've met him, and is a great kid. Yeah. And I spent 5 minutes with him the first night he got there. He spoke about his passion for a degree and what that meant for his family. And I think he epitomizes what our university is all about. It's typical Scott, going to find great fits. But our coaching staff, our compliance staff, give them tremendous credit, and coach has taken a tremendous amount of heat from other coaches. I've heard, not directly, but I've heard some athletic directors speak up about it. And this is a circumstance where they worked hard to find someone who qualified within the existing rules to be a student athlete, present it to the NCAA. The NCAA makes the decision, and they certified this as a student athlete that has 4 years of eligibility remaining. And James is coming here with the intent of contributing and also working towards that degree. Yeah. And so feel really, really good. I don't love some of the heat that he's had to take and our coaches had to take, and the booing is, I think it's somewhat to be expected. But I'm really excited for what he means to our program and for our coaches for working hard to continue to go find the best student athletes. There's a great line from Moneyball where John Henry's sitting with Billy Beane at the table at Fenway, and he says, the first one through the wall oftentimes gets bloodied. And, in this particular situation, it's one of the first examples of someone doing this in this new era. And so I think that's, we're seeing that as far as some of the media and some of the attention that's been put on those guys. But I think it's going to work out really well for all parties involved.
Good. Yeah. Love what Coach Tang said. Jerome Tang from K-State. Did you see that?
I haven't.
Coach Tang said, dogs don't bark at parked cars.
There you go. That's right.
That says it right there.
That's right. And it's a reflection of Coach Drew. He's going to do so within the mission of the university and within the framework of what the NCAA allows, but he's going to turn over every rock. He's going to look for every way he can to best position his program so that he can promote the university in a positive way. And so I think this is an example where he's done exactly that.
That's great. Let's talk vision. You look 5 years down the road.
Yeah.
What would you like to see then that maybe we don't have now or we're just now putting in place?
Yeah, I think it's all about taking care of our family. I talked about that at our all-staff meeting on Monday. And when I say our family, I'm talking about our student athletes, our coaches, our staff. But I also think it's the larger Baylor family and anyone that considers this university near and dear to itself. We need to focus on Baylor. That's my area of importance in terms of the way I prioritize my time, is how do we care for our community, both internally and externally. I think if we do that, we're going to be very happy where things go in 5 years. There's always a conversation about what's that next, media rights deal, and that has significant ramifications as it relates to each university and where they stand from because of the financials associated with that. And I can just tell you that if we take care of Baylor and we really prioritize our fans and our student athletes, the rest of that stuff will take care of itself. Because as I spoke to before, this university fills a unique position within the world of college athletics. And if we do that in a way that's authentic and it's at a level of excellence, then I have no doubt we'll have a very, very prominent seat at the table. But today it's about making sure that our family and our student athletes and our staff and our coaches are taken care of. And with that, I'm excited about what the 5 years ahead will look like.
That's great. And you want to win. Yeah. I know you well enough to know you're very competitive.
Sure.
I know you want to win. How do you balance that desire to win, really pressure to win and be successful, on the field, on the court, on the diamond, those, plus matching that with educating and nurturing our student athletes and maintaining our, faith-based culture?
Yeah. Again, I think those two are symbiotic. I think they don't compete with each other. I think that you go find those people that believe in the mission, but if those people believe in the mission of the university, and we have a calling and I would say responsibility to do so at the highest level. If we're going to compete in a sport, we need to focus on being successful in the sport. If there's a concession or a mindset that we're just not going to be successful in the sport, I would challenge, why are we doing it? And I think that's our faith that calls us to have that mindset. And so I definitely believe that those two coexist. And I think the student athletes that we recruit and the coaches that we have on our staff definitely agree with that statement.
Yeah. Let's talk football. In the middle of the portal right now, the portal season, as we record this, Dave and his staff are working diligently, to fill that roster. Yeah. What would you say to our fans as we look ahead to? It's going to be a new look roster, but man, they're working so hard. What would you say to our fans looking ahead to the 2026 season?
Yeah, I mean, the portal is such an interesting change in the world of college athletics and specifically football, because a lot of these decisions and a lot of the energy that's being dedicated to the portal was done over multiple years recruiting high school student athletes, because transfers weren't as prolific as obviously they are to now, and they weren't done in this really compact time, and you didn't have unlimited transfers to some degree like you have now. And so a lot of that has been compressed into this 14-day period. And, I think it's kind of like a game. You have your first 5 minutes of the game, you get way up and you get excited, and then a run goes back the other direction. You get a little bit discouraged, and it's a little bit like, let's see where we are at the end of the game. And, there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of early activity. If you try to measure the outcomes based on some of the clips that you get in the media and some of the early commitments, I think we'll find out the success come the fall. And I think that, to Dave's credit, there's decisions that are being made, and there's an approach that's being taken this year that I would say has probably been created because of lessons learned in the past. And there's hard decisions as it relates to what's being mandated through this day and age of college football. I'm proud of the way that they're approaching it. I think there's momentum. I think there are the student athletes that want to be here, that can help us be successful, that are committing and that are coming this direction. I think there'll be many more on the way. I think we have a coaching staff that understands the fit, and what are we looking for? And the person that might get all the press and the attention may not be the fit for us for a variety of different reasons. And the guy that goes completely under the radar, there's been plenty in our athletic history
right.
that didn't get a lot of attention come, signing day that have ended up being massive contributors for us. So I'd say let it play itself out. Let's see where we stand. We know the importance and the need to get better this year, and let's see where we are this fall. And I would just say I'm encouraged and optimistic as where we stand today.
Good. We have to win, don't we? I mean, you have to win in football.
Yeah, I mean, football is for the economics, and we said that at the all staff meeting. I talked about my 3 priorities is the 3 Fs: the fans, funding, and football. And the economics, the 4th F, financials, mandate that football is a priority. And football is such a cultural event in college athletics, and it's where all the other sports are bringing student athletes to the table to recruit and give them a taste of the Baylor experience. And everybody drafts off that. And I think you see that a lot in college sports where, football programs having a moment, and you see other schools, you see other programs within that department that almost feed off the momentum associated with that. So they carry an important position. Not only are financially does that require that the first sport that usually goes off in the fall, with volleyball and soccer, and it certainly can elevate and drive a momentum across the athletic department. And so it is crucial, and it makes so much of a determiner in your TV contracts. And so we've got to be committed to competing at the highest levels in that. And I'm excited about directionally where we're heading in the future.
We talked about fans, how important they are. They are so important to all of us. But the way fans engage, the way they consume games is changing. What does an ideal game day and fan experience look like to you?
Yeah, I think you have to look at the totality of friction points that may incur for a fan as it relates to experiencing the game, because TV is so good and the broadcasts are so good. You really have to work hard to earn the effort for a fan to make the time to come, and whether it be driving, 2 hours, or in my case, as a fan, I drove, 10 minutes. And I think through those people that make big sacrifices to come here and thinking through the entire process. And so I think from start to finish, from the time that they get their tickets to the time they get back home, everything has to be considered and thought through the lens of what makes it most fan friendly. And I'm always really intentional, because I think this is an easy one to soundbite and cut out of context. I want us to win. And I don't want this to be, these two are not separate. I want us to win, and I want us to push and work hard for our coaches within the framework of our mission, within, the boundaries we need to operate under, work as hard as we can to be successful on the field. However, for me, success as it relates to the fan experience is we can be really disappointed about losing, and we want to win, and there's never a emotion to offset the fact of you went to a game with the hope of winning, and you left with the disappointment of losing. But success for me as it relates to fan experiences was the totality of the experience, even in a loss, still enjoyable. And truth is, with sports, if you're going to win at all times, and I think that's sometimes the games where before you go to the game, we're going to win this game, and if we lose, it's going to be catastrophic. Not like, oh, we could lose it, but man, this was such an upset, and was no way we should have lost that game. Those aren't the most enjoyable of games. The most enjoyable games are the ones that you didn't think you could win and you win, or the games where it's in suspense the whole time. And those are the games that you remember. And so the games you don't remember are the ones that you had no business losing that you lose. And so I would just say that when you evaluate your experience, especially football, which is such a all-day commitment, can we say we delivered did we deliver the ROI on the experience that's not solely based on the wins and losses? And again, I won't let that be cut out of context, but can you answer that yes, and still not necessarily experience a win? And at some point, if you don't win, then it's no longer possible to achieve that. But that's how we evaluate success as it relates to the fan experience. And that starts well before they show up at the stadium.
Good. Very good. This is a different world, isn't it? College athletics than when you left here 7 years ago. NIL, transfer portal, we talked about all those things. It really is a new world. How do you look at the future in those areas, and what excites you about, the way we grab hold of that and make the most of it? Yeah,
I think, there's certainly every school is wanting to be in a spot where they say, hey, we don't want to be left behind. This is certainly a moment of change, and we don't want to be left behind. And I think, as you look at it, there's there's always the concerns of the haves and have-nots, and where do you fall in terms of resources? And my take on that is the schools that will be successful moving forward in this new era are the schools that know who they are, that understand their identity, that understand what we kind of talked about. What are their strengths that they can bring to the table that no one else can? And I think if you look at the current landscape, the schools that have experienced that success in the quickest capacity are those that know exactly who they are. And I think as we talk about sports that are successful for us right now, I think that rings true. And I think the sports that we know we've got to get better in, I think that identification for what we stand for and what our brand is going to be is paramount. So I actually am, pretty excited that we bring something from an identity standpoint, as we just talked about, that few can match. And I think if we understand that and we know how to harness that in a way, I really think the results are we're gonna be really positive for us.
That's good. I mean, for Baylor, it's not a matter of keeping up. I think there's opportunities to lead in areas like NIL and athlete storytelling, digital storytelling, things like that. I mean, we've got great opportunities there.
Yeah, and again, people talk about fundraising, and I think that a lot of people have said, "Hey, this guy's here because they believe he can raise funds," and I appreciate the compliment, and I wish there was some highly scientific and calculated way that's brought to the table. But I go back to it's pretty simple. It's doing what you say you're going to do, and I think it also is telling your story. I always tell a story specifically of a fundraising moment early in my career, and I'll leave the specifics out of it, but I will tell you we were going to make an ask, a significant ask associated with a project that's near and dear to us at Baylor, and I'll always remember that the conversation with that individual was highly enjoyable when we made the ask. When you think there's a lot of nerves and anxiety associated with it, that person knew the need. They knew the story, they believed in the story, and there really wasn't an ask. The ask was already done well in advance. And so, it's telling the story and telling that unique one-of-one nature of Baylor and what it provides and why it's relevant moving forward in the world of college athletics. I really think if we do that well, and that's done through a variety of different ways, we've got to be creative, because the way that story is consumed by one generation is different than the way another story. We need to meet our consumer where they're at. We oftentimes, inside the brand, think that we've got everyone's attention, and we forget that there's competing interest across the board just to capture people's attention. And that as much as Baylor is all encompassing to us, while we have people that dearly love it, it's just a small sliver of what their attention capacity can handle. And so I think we have to understand the onus is upon us. We need to go find that consumer where they're at. We need to meet them there. We need to provide storytelling in a way that they'll consume. And if we do that well, and they understand what we're about, the funding will come. Those people will want to invest. You don't actually have to ask for the money if you do the story well and they see the need. And that's the best situation is to get to, is where that individual, that funder, that donor is saying, "Hey, where can I help?" They're actually proactively saying, "How can I be a part of this?" And I've been overwhelmed with the amount of people, even early on, that have just said, "Tell me how I can help." Wow. And that's a testament to the storytelling that's happened before. And I think if we do that at an exceptional level moving forward, I don't want to say you never have to ask. People sometimes need to be directed. But you're going to have more often than not the people that are going to come and say, "Hey, where can I do my part to be successful?"
Yeah. Wow, that's terrific. Doug, I know something that's really important to you and close to your heart. You talked about it again at the staff meeting, was student athlete care and the student athlete experience. You talked about Kenny Boyd and his position, and that is an area where just give us your thoughts on that, developing the student athletes, the 4 pillars and everything, not just athletically, but everything associated with them.
Well, I acknowledge in the all staff, that's probably one of my, as I reflected on the words that I offered in the first introductory, moment with the press and with our fans, I don't think I talked enough about that. And I almost take it for granted because it's so important that you forget. Now we do need to speak about that. And, you think about that NCAA commercial where it talks about the number of people that go pros, right, and those stats are still real. And there's still a vital need for a great experience, both in the form of an academic education, but spiritual growth and character formation. And so I would say that, my experience is some of the early observations and getting to be around our student athletes. It's so invigorating when you get that time and, in 5 minutes with James, and in a breakfast with Sawyer Robertson and time, with Aaliyah Miller, just the student athletes that we have here are such special individuals because our coaches have done such a great job of figuring out who fits here. And, equipping these individuals to go out and to be ambassadors on behalf of the university, but on behalf of the kingdom to make a difference it's an honor, but it's a responsibility. Mm-hmm. And you need to take it seriously. And it's ultimately what we're in the business of doing. And if we do that well, we fulfill our ultimate mission, which is to promote Baylor University. And those student athletes are ambassadors on our behalf. And if they're doing their job both on the court and off the court while they're here, and after they leave, then we've done our job for the university.
We talked about fans, how important they are, engaging the fans. What about, what are your thoughts as far as being a part of the community, the Waco, Central Texas, and then our student body also, engaging them, outside just Baylor alums?
Yeah, two great segments to talk about, and two that I personally can relate to, because my wife and our family have now called Waco home for 27 years. Oh, wow. Came here, when I was a freshman, and so when I left Baylor, one of the most attractive things about Magnolia was a chance to lead at a dynamic, company, but also do so in Waco. And when I knew that it was time to look for that next opportunity, for me, it was a non-negotiable. I was going to have to find a company that would allow me to remain in Waco because I love this community that much. And that's what was special about the next space, is it was a fully remote company. So it allowed us to continue to call Waco home. This is such a great place. And I think, student athletes, coaches, administrators, they come here and they may not know a lot about it. And the common theme has just been, man, this is an awesome community. It's such a selling point. And I would tell you early experiences, I can't tell you how many individuals I've met over the last 2 or 3 weeks that I may not have gotten to know before in my previous tenure, and that have moved here in the last, 5 years, right, and that have said, hey, we retired. And these people could have gone anywhere. They could have retired to a beach. They could have moved, to an island. They could have moved to the mountains to get out of the heat, and they could have gone anywhere. And they said, hey, we wanted to move to Waco because we wanted to fill our free time with going to Baylor athletic events. And that's two-part. One, it's a great place to go to watch games, and year-round having a lot of activities in your calendar. Look at this week as a great example. But it's also because this is a great place to live, and credit to Waco and McLennan County for creating that dynamic. So I think it's an asset. It's another part of our advantage where we are located, but it's a really great place that has continued to grow, just like the university. And then the student body, it's near and dear to me. I mean, I was there. I was running the line. I've got my Baylor line jersey, and I know what this experience means.
You need to break that out.
Yeah, I should. I won't say what's on the back of that jersey, but we could probably have a little guessing campaign of what's on the back of my jersey. Right. But I'm a product of Baylor University. Like I believe in it. I was a consumer of what it means, and I just think that there's such a special experience for our students, even away from athletics. And we also know that, people spend a lot of money to come here. They make a sacrifice. Families make a sacrifice. And, there's so much good stuff that happens on campus. But we have a responsibility to add to that experience and to get to go watch, the highest level of athletic competition as a student, and to be a difference maker in Foster or McLean or the Baylor Ballpark or Getterman. Like it's a joy and it's a privilege again. And so, I still go back to we have a responsibility to the students to make that process easy. How do we listen to them? How do we, ensure that it is an easy opportunity to come over here, because they make a difference. As we know, you watch a basketball game over the break and students are missed. Like that energy, it can be a full arena. I don't know what the ratio is, but one student is worth a couple of other heads, just with their activity and the way they operate. We miss them when they're gone. And you look at the schedule. For me, I always look at the basketball schedule and I count the games that we have at home before students are back. And, Wednesday night, we had a few less students. You're like, this Saturday, we're hoping that more are back. And because we know how much they bring and how much they add, and they make a difference. And so I have such a connection with them. I'm so excited to get engaged with them. And I think that student Baylor line running across the field at the start of a football game is truly one of the best traditions in college sports.
It is.
And so there's energy and there's opportunity and there's so much symbolism in those students sprinting across the field. And I want it to be something that those kids look up to and are excited to do for years, and then get that chance, and it's a rush like it should be. And we have a job to make sure that that's everything that it's built up to be.
Yeah, I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
You've been described as a leader who understands people, communicates really well, understands organizational dynamics as well. What would you like the culture in our athletic department to look like?
I think honesty, and good communication is cliche, but there's a decency in the way that you communicate, and there's a respect in the timeliness of it. There's a respect in the way that you discuss and debate. And I reference the quote from a book that I read that says, argue like you're right and listen like you're wrong.
That's good.
And I think that's pretty reflective of the environment that I want us to operate. And also understand it's bigger than ourselves. It's bigger than any one team. And at the end of the day, this is about what's in the best interest of Baylor University. How do we position Baylor Athletics to be the true front porch of Baylor? And our objective as an athletic department is to open the eyes to people that may not know about Baylor, and hopefully get a student that was not considering Baylor. We want to get Baylor University on the radar. And if Baylor Athletics is doing their job, that's what we're doing. And if you look at the successful peaks of a lot of athletic departments, there is a direct correlation to the application quantity, to the admissions, right, that is undeniable. You've read about that, and there's other schools in the conference that are having that moment that we certainly had at levels that were historic. And I think when we're doing our job well, that's a steady state. We're introducing people to this university that may not know it, and the diversity of our sports, the diversity of our student body, and specifically our student athletes, give us a chance to maybe reach a demographic that would not have been turned on to Baylor. And I think that's just part of the call. That's part of the call to bring people into the equation. And so that is what our department culture needs to be centered on. And that's what success will look like for us.
Yeah, really good. What would you say separates good athletic departments from great ones?
I go back to knowing their identity. Who are we? And what does success look like? And I would say most importantly, what does the response to disappointment and failures, I wouldn't use the word failure, but what lack of success look like? And how do you learn from it? How do you grow from it, both on the field and off the field? I think humility is a big part of it. Is to be able to acknowledge what you know and to surround yourself with people that know a lot more than you. And so I think that culture is going to be imperative to what I hope that we're about.
Yeah, very good. You've seen Baylor Athletics. You were a student here. You were a student manager with basketball. You worked with baseball. You worked with what was then ISP. I mean, so many facets. Now you're sitting in the athletic director's chair. What has all of that combined taught you? That journey taught you about leadership?
Yeah, I think it is the journey that matters. And I reflect back to the moment, a couple of Mondays ago, we were all together. And what I think that has taught me is that I'm just symbolic and reflective of the larger athletic department and the community. I'm here to serve that constituency, certainly not the other way around. And it's first. The first is last. Last is first. I think it's very true. And I think that if you're honest, with your team, if you own your strengths and you lean into your weaknesses, that journey that you spoke of sitting in different seats along the way and having experienced the university, the last 7 years, I've been a fan. I've been, I haven't been an active participant in terms of the day-to-day of athletics. And that's where I go back. Like, I needed that. I needed that moment.
That's important.
I needed that moment. Yeah. I needed to understand, and I told this in the first conversation with Coach Aranda, like, I needed to understand the joys of those peaks and what the fan experienced.
Right.
And I needed to understand the frustration that, I walked out of McLean Stadium pretty upset, this year on a handful of occasions. And I hadn't experienced that as a true fan prior to departing, Baylor Athletics, and specifically heading into the private sector. And that helped give me perspective that I think I can talk to that and understand that perspective much better than I would have had I stayed through it the whole time. And, I just would say the journey has certainly given me, context that I'm excited to now hopefully lead with.
Terrific. Well, I'm glad the journey has brought you back to Baylor. These are exciting times. They really are. And so excited to work alongside you. And we look forward to great days ahead.
Well, and I will tell you, you know this, but 18 years to the day that I was getting announced here at Hurd, you were introducing the wedding party at the McNamee
Your wedding party.
Urbanki wedding.
That's
and so
right.
It is such a sweet story. And every day I wake up and I'm like, I get to do this. And I wake up this morning and I get to have a phone conversation with one of our coaches. I get to talk to one of our Bear Foundation, president. I just came from that. I get to sit down in a chair and talk to John Morris.
Uh-huh.
It's every step of the way. It's a dream. And it's such an honor. And I know who I'm here to serve, and will work hard to do everything to position Baylor Athletics to continue to be what I think what it deserves and what it's capable of being.
That's great. You're the right man for the job. God bless you as you continue in this job.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks for visiting with us.
This is fun.
All right. Doug McNamee, Baylor's Vice President and Director of Athletics on the Sic Em Podcast.